This is a lecture on second declension nouns. So last week we did first declension nouns. This week we're doing second declension nouns. Again, just as a point of review, remember that Greek nouns have case. That means that they have endings that indicate how they function within a sentence. They can be nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative. Greek nouns have gender. They can be masculine, feminine, or neuter. And Greek nouns have number. That is, they can be singular or plural. Here's another example of how nouns form singulars and plurals. And remember from last week I talked about English adding an S or an ES to make a plural. So boy goes to boys and box goes to boxes. In Greek, we add endings to make a plural. Remember last week when we did first declension nouns, we went from phone to phonai. This week, I'm showing you second declension nouns, where we go from logos, singular, to logoi, word to words. That's a masculine form. Here's a neuter form, teknon to tekna. That's child and children. Again, remember that a Greek noun is either masculine, feminine, or neuter. And again, it is grammatical gender, and that does not reflect natural gender. So Greek nouns are gendered, but it is grammatical gender. And the majority of second declension nouns are masculine or neuter. Masculine second declension nouns end in omicron sigma in their nominative form, and neuter second declension nouns end in omicron noon in their nominative form. Notice the thing that links the masculine and the neuter together in this particular declension is the omicron. Both have that omicron on the end of their noun stem prior to the endings going on. Again, back to case. Greek nouns change their form to perform different functions or even to show meaning, different meaning within a sentence. And these different functions are called cases. And the cases are the same for first and second declension nouns. In fact, all declensions of nouns, the cases are the same. So all nouns are either going to be nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative. Again, to review the link between case and function, think of the nominative case as the subject case. Think of the genitive case as the case that talks about possession or relationship. The dative case is the case of indirect object, and the accusative case is the case of direct object. So here's an example of the form of the noun in terms of its case and function. So nominative is subject case, and we have logos, which means a word, and logoi, words. Genitive is the possessive, so we have logu, of a word, and logon, of words. The dative case is indirect object, so we have logo, which is two or four a word, and logois, in the plural, two or four words. And the accusative is direct object, logon, a word, and logus, words, in the plural form. Just to review declensions again, the first declension are made up of feminine nouns ending in an alpha or an eta, so phone or cardia. Second declension nouns are made up of nouns that are masculine and neuter, and their stems end in an omicron, so logos and ergon. And finally, third declension nouns are nouns of all three gender, and they end with a consonant. An example there is sarx, which happens to be a feminine noun. Paradigm, as I mentioned last week, is a representative pattern or an example chart. So remember I talked about the paradigms of the first declension nouns that end in eta, or the first declension nouns that end in alpha. Today we'll be learning two paradigms. One paradigm that represents the masculine forms of second declension nouns and the neuter forms of second declension nouns. Let's look at the masculine forms first. And the word I'm using here is the word for word, which is logos in the Greek New Testament. So I've also put the form of the article next to the noun. So ha logos, the word, hoi logoi, the words, tu logu, of the word, ton logon, of words, to logo, to the word, tois logois, to the words, and ton logon, the word, tous logus, the words. Now notice a few things about this paradigm. See, the omicron has in fact lengthened to an omega, and the iota subscripts, like all forms that we see in first and second declension nouns. And what we observe over here is the same thing that we observe with the genitive plural in the first declension nouns. That stem vowel on the end has disappeared, and the own takes over because it's a long vowel. Okay? So that is the pattern. Sigma, upsilon, lengthened omicron or an omega with a iota subscript, a nun, an iota, own, omega nun, iota sigma, ois, upsilon sigma, us. And here's the form of the article, which again bears a striking resemblance to what we're seeing here. So ha logos, tu logu, to logo, ton logon, hoi logoi, ton logon, tois logois, tous logus. And here's the neuter forms. And we're using the word teknon, which is child, and I put the form of the article here. Ta teknon, tu teknu, ton teknon, ta teknon, ta tekna, ton teknon, tois teknois, ta tekna. Okay, so notice a few things here. That the nominative and the accusative singular are the same. There's a nun on the end. Okay, ton, ta teknon, ta teknon. So you will notice that the accusative and the masculine form of these second declension nouns share a similar set of endings, that they share the same accusative singular, the dative is the same, and the genitive is the same. And flip over to the plural, ta tekna, ton teknon, again the same omega nun ending that we've seen in all the forms of the first and second declension nouns with this own on the end. And tois teknois, again, the iota sigma is the same as the dative plural in the masculine, and ta tekna. So we have similarities with the genitive and dative forms, and we have another type of similarity. You will notice that the nominative and accusative of the neuter, both singular and plural, are the same. That's true for every form of the neuter noun. Okay? So again, talking about morphology, it's an important part of studying Greek. It's important to note these changes that occur within the Greek words and why. Okay? So a morpheme is a part of the word that is the smallest meaning unit of a word. So when I talk about case endings, they are morphemes because they add meaning. They're a part of the word that adds meaning to it. An inflection is a change or addition to a word that alters its meaning or function. Greek is a highly inflected language, so get used to seeing inflected forms everywhere. And again, these case endings are morphemes, and they come in singular and plural form, so they change the meaning, and they also change the function of a noun, making it act as a subject, to express possession, to be an indirect object or a direct object. So let's talk a little bit about morphology with second declension nouns. Again, what links second declension nouns, the masculine and the neuter forms together, is the common omicron ending. So logos and teknon. Before you put those nominative endings on, there's an omicron. The genitive and the dative forms of the masculine and the neuter forms are the same. So that's the singular and the plural forms. The neuter nominative and the neuter accusative are the same in the singular and plural forms. We've seen that already. This is an important point to note as you look at words and parse words. Don't get words mixed up. Now you'll look at that alpha on the end of tekna and you'll say, oh, that must be an alpha ending first declension noun. And it's not. So be aware what's a first declension word like cardia, first declension feminine form, nominative singular ends in an alpha. Tekna is a second declension neuter word, but it's a nominative and accusative plural end in an alpha. So you've got to know that or you'll get them mixed up. That's a first declension word, that's a second declension word, okay? The genitive plural is the same in first and second declension nouns with that omega noon ending. And finally, the iota subscripts in the dative singular in all first and second declension forms. So you have the same pattern with all those. That kind of ending vowel lengthens and the iota subscripts underneath. Okay? That's the marker for the dative singular. If you see an iota subscript, right away your mind should go that it's a dative singular. Now the iota subscripts in other words that you're going to learn about, but that's further on down the road. But for now, this iota subscript is a good indicator that it's a dative singular. So talking about morphology again, I like to break it down in terms of the ending that's put on. So the stem is logo, you add a sigma and becomes an S. The genitive is logu, that upsilon. The dative is an iota that subscripts. The accusative is a noon that goes on the end. The nominative plural is an iota that doesn't subscript because that doesn't lengthen, you just get logoi. Logon is this omega noon ending that just comes along and gets rid of the omicron. The dative plural is the iota sigma, it's logois, and the plural is upsilon sigma, it's logus. Okay, so if it helps just to memorize the form, that's fine, or memorize the endings, that's fine as well. I go into morphology to kind of explain there's a stem and then there's a set of endings that go on. That may help you as you move on to other second declension masculine nouns, just to know the endings go on to that omicron stem. Here's an example of the same thing using a neuter word, tekna. So noon, upsilon, iota subscript, noon. Alpha, on, iota sigma, and alpha. Okay? So again, the stem ending with an omicron and the endings, and then the final form. Okay? Let's look at the feminine form of the article from last week that we learned. So, hey, hi, nominative forms, taste, tone, genitive forms, te, tais, dative forms, tain, tas, plural forms. Okay, and again, as I said last week, you can learn them downward and learn the singulars and the plurals, or across like this. Hey, tais, te, tain, hi, tone, tais, tas, or hey, hi, taste, tone, te, tais, tain, tas. Here's the masculine forms, which you've seen already, but we'll go over them again. Ha, hoi, tu, tone, to, tois, ton, tus. or ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, ton, tois, tus. And here is the neuter forms. Ta, tu, to, ta, ta, ton, tois, ta. Or ta, ta, tu, ton, to, tois, ta, ta. Okay, now we're going to learn how to parse, again, some second declension nouns. And remember, what are the 5 pieces of information that you need as you parse a noun? Its lexical form, that's a dictionary form, its gender, its case, its number, and its translation. So let's look at logoi. Logoi, okay, is an omicron iota ending. So the lexical form of this guy is logos, its nominative singular form. Its gender is masculine, okay, because we know its lexical form. We know that's the masculine form of a second declension noun. It's a nominative form. It's a nominative plural form. The nominative plural form is omicron iota, oi. And the translation of that is words. Words, it's plural. Okay? And technon. The lexical form happens to be the same as its inflected form here, right? This is technon. Okay? Technon is a lexical form. It's neuter because it ends in that noon in its lexical form, omicron noon. This inflected form, we don't know because we don't know the context, but it could be nominative or accusative. Remember, nominative, accusative forms of the neuter noun, both the singular and the plural, are the same form. So it could either be either case. And it's the singular form, and its translation is a child. Now, context will always determine whether it's a nominative or an accusative. We'll know from its context. This is just our analysis of just the bare form here, and we don't know which is which. Moving on, I'm going to teach you a new case. So far we've learned nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. The vocative case is a rarer case in the Greek New Testament that doesn't happen a lot, but you still need to learn it. It's the case of direct address. So when someone is calling out to someone, brothers and sisters, in a letter or in a discourse within a gospel, the vocative is being used. Or when we're praying. So when we say our Father, we're using the vocative form of Father. For instance, in the episode from John chapter 4, when Jesus is talking to the woman at the well, she says to him, "Sir, give me this water." And the form of sir is kuri. That's the vocative form of the noun kurios, which can mean Lord, or in certain contexts, sir. Kuri, give me this water. So that's the vocative form, vocative singular form of kurios. It's direct address. And so here's the paradigm for the vocative case for the masculine and feminine forms of second and first declension nouns. So the masculine forms, second declension, kuri and kurioi. So kuri is different. You just see that epsilon. Kurioi is very much like the nominative plural. And in the feminine first declension, the vocative forms are the same as the nominative. So it's adelphe and hora, adelphi and horai. And in the neuter, the vocative case is the same as the neuter forms of the nominative, teknon and tekna. Okay? So the only real one you need to be aware of is kuri. And you'll know from context that it's the vocative case that's being used based on, the context will show its direct address. I want to talk about proper nouns. Proper nouns identify a specific person, place, or thing. And in the Greek text, proper nouns are always capitalized, just like they are in English. Now, some proper nouns are declinable, and what I mean by that is they have different case endings based on their function within the sentence. But many are not declinable. If you look in your textbook, you'll see that our authors provide a listing of the proper nouns that are declinable and the proper nouns that are indeclinable. You'll see the difference. So I refer you to that list in the grammar book. So how do we know what case a proper noun is functioning within the sentence if it's indeclinable? Well, again, context will help us out there, and at many times there will be an article with that proper noun that will indicate its case, because again, articles are always declined. Okay, articles always have case endings, whereas some nouns don't have case endings, they're indeclinable. And lastly, article in Greek, tendency to use the article with proper nouns in Greek. But it doesn't mean we're talking about the word the in conjunction with that proper noun. We don't translate the. So for instance, ha Jesus is translated just Jesus, not the Jesus, okay? So even though the article occurs with that proper noun, we don't translate the because it's a proper noun. Here's an example of the declension pattern for Jesus, Jesus. Notice that it is what we would call partially declinable. So ha Jesus, sigma on the end, to Jesu, upsilon, dative, to Jesu, and accusative ton Jesun. So it has the sigma and the noon of the nominative and accusative. It has an upsilon with the genitive, but the dative doesn't have this iota subscript. It has the omicron upsilon like a genitive. Okay, so it's partially declinable. Okay, and until next time, this is your Professor Jim Knight, Jimmy the Greek, signing off.